announcing today a major show of military force in the region.
In the vast, unpredictable waters of modern warfare, a new type of threat is emerging, one that challenges even the most powerful navies. Imagine, if you will, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. surrounded by a swarm of 45 fast-moving attack boats, each one capable of striking with deadly precision. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood movie, but a very real, terrifying scenario that could unfold in the near future. In today's video, we're diving into a near-catastrophic encounter involving the USS Gerald R. the flagship of the United States Navy, and the naval forces of Venezuela. A coordinated assault on a scale never seen before. Armed with small, fast-moving boats and a strategy designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defense systems, Venezuela's military launched an audacious attack that brought the very concept of modern naval warfare into question. Why is this attack so significant? The USS Gerald R. is more than just a warship. It's a symbol of American military might. Boasting cutting-edge technologies like advanced radar systems, anti-missile defense mechanisms, and state-of-the-art aircraft capabilities, the Gerald R. is the epitome of naval power. Yet, despite its size and technological superiority, it faced an unprecedented challenge in the form of a swarm attack, where small, agile vessels attempted to break through its defenses in a relentless wave. How did Venezuela, a country with far fewer resources than the United States, come to possess such a threat? What is the strategy behind this kind of asymmetrical warfare? And could it be the future of naval combat? These are the questions we will explore in this video, as we break down the tactics, technologies, and the very real dangers of swarm warfare. In the first part of this incident, we'll look at the early days of the confrontation. How did the Venezuelan military gather 45 boats, each designed for speed and stealth, to strike at the heart of one of the most powerful naval forces in the world? It's not just about numbers, but about a new kind of strategy, one that bypasses traditional naval power in favor of speed, surprise, and sheer volume. Could such an attack force the United States Navy to rethink how it defends its most prized assets? As we continue, we'll examine the USS Gerald R. response. Equipped with a range of defensive systems, missile defense, anti-ship weapons, and electronic countermeasures, the ship and its strike group were prepared for a conventional attack. But nothing could have fully prepared them for the relentless onslaught of fast-moving boats, each one trying to penetrate the defenses in a coordinated fashion. Was the Gerald R. defense system enough to stop this innovative assault? And what can we learn from how the United States Navy responded to this new threat? Finally, we'll analyze the consequences of this attack on the future of naval warfare. Could this incident redefine how the world's navies operate? And what does it mean for the security of massive ships like the USS Gerald R. in an era of increasing asymmetrical threats? Stay tuned as we unravel the details of this incredible event, dissecting the strategy, the technology, and the lessons learned from this high-stakes confrontation. What happens when a swarm of small boats challenges the might of a supercarrier? This is a story you won't want to miss. On a cold, early morning in the Gulf of Venezuela, the calm was shattered as 45 high-speed attack boats belonging to the Venezuelan Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, powered through the waves, heading straight for the USS Gerald R. and its battle group. It wasn't a typical confrontation. No missiles were fired, no large ships were engaged in heavy combat. Instead, it was a bold, high-risk tactic, swarming, using fast-moving vessels to overwhelm the defenses of one of the world's most advanced military ships. The stakes were high, and the outcome was uncertain. The USS Gerald R. the crown jewel of the United States Navy, was leading its strike group in a routine patrol in the Caribbean Sea when the threat first emerged on radar. The aircraft carrier, which is equipped with cutting-edge technologies, had already been on high alert due to escalating tensions in the region. But no one, not even the most seasoned commanders, had anticipated an attack of this nature. The Venezuelan government, long known for its anti-Western stance, had been quietly assembling a new force of smaller, faster boats, each one carrying a high-powered, precision-guided weapon. The idea was simple. If they could overwhelm the defensive systems of a supercarrier with speed and numbers, they might stand a chance at crippling the vessel, or at least causing enough damage to send a strong message to the world. The Venezuelan forces had learned from recent naval skirmishes and had studied how larger naval powers, particularly the US, relied on high-tech systems to fend off threats. Their strategy wasn't just to attack, it was to innovate. The attack boats, though small and seemingly insignificant compared to the mighty Gerald R. Ford, were armed with high-velocity anti-ship missiles, capable of piercing the weaker spots of the carrier's hull. To make matters even more dangerous, these boats had been modified with stealth technology, making them harder to detect by radar. The Venezuelan military, led by its commander General Eduardo Medina, had also adopted a tactic that had been used with increasing success in irregular warfare: the swarm technique. A swarm attack isn't about overwhelming an enemy with a few large vessels. It's about precision and coordination. By striking in concert, with dozens of boats, the attackers sought to create confusion and force the defenders to make split-second decisions that could lead to fatal mistakes. At first, the Gerald R. Ford's radar systems detected the incoming boats as a group of small, fast-moving objects, but they didn't register as an immediate threat. After all, the vessel was surrounded by a heavily armed strike group, with several destroyers and cruisers, not to mention its own onboard defenses, including anti-aircraft guns, missile systems, and even drones designed to intercept incoming threats. But the Venezuelans had anticipated this. They knew that the key to their attack's success was not just surprise, but timing. The boats were positioned to strike all at once, creating a blur of movement that would test the ship's ability to react. By the time the USS Gerald R. Ford had fully realized the extent of the threat, it was too late to stop the attack before it began. With a combination of speed and precision, the attack boats launched a synchronized barrage, firing anti-ship missiles while simultaneously deploying smaller, high-speed drones designed to confuse the radar and target the ship's weaker points. The situation was dire. The strike group was forced into immediate action. The USS Gerald R. Ford began launching countermeasures, but the boats were too numerous, and the drones were interfering with the carrier's ability to lock onto targets effectively. The Gerald R. Ford's onboard defense systems went into overdrive as the crew scrambled to bring up the ship's defenses. The coordinated response of the strike group, led by the USS destroyer Ross, was to push forward, creating a perimeter around the carrier and forming a defensive shield to intercept the incoming missiles. But the Venezuelan forces were relentless. The boats would retreat, regroup, and then rush in again, attempting to find a gap in the defenses. The sheer unpredictability of the attack made it incredibly difficult for the Gerald R. Ford and its supporting ships to mount an effective defense. The air was filled with the sound of intercepted missiles, the eerie whine of high-speed drones buzzing around the ships, and the steady hum of the USS Gerald R. Ford's weapon systems as they fought to keep up. This was no longer a simple threat. It was an all-out battle, one that tested not only the physical defenses of the U.S. Navy, but also its ability to adapt in the face of new, unconventional warfare tactics. In this moment, the significance of the attack became clear. It wasn't just about a single ship being under threat. It was about a shift in naval combat. The world was witnessing a new form of warfare, one where smaller, faster, and more agile forces could challenge the dominance of the largest naval vessels. This incident would become a turning point, raising serious questions about the future of naval defense, the effectiveness of traditional strategies, and the evolving nature of military power. As the initial signs of the incoming attack became clear, the USS Gerald R. Ford's radar systems started to pick up multiple unidentified contacts, but the crew remained unaware of the true scale of the threat. On board, the aircraft carrier's battle-ready personnel had trained for a variety of combat scenarios, but nothing prepared them for a swarm of fast-moving, seemingly untraceable attack boats. The attack wasn't the result of a single ship or missile. Instead, It was an all-out attempt to overwhelm the defenses of the most advanced military vessel the U.S. Navy had ever produced. Venezuela, with limited naval power compared to the U.S., had adopted a new and unorthodox strategy. With financial constraints and a lack of large, capable warships, the Venezuelan Navy had instead focused on building a force of small, fast attack boats, 15-meter vessels that could cut through the water at speeds exceeding 80 knots. These boats were not merely speedboats. They were military-grade, equipped with high-velocity anti-ship missiles and modified with stealth technologies designed to make them harder to detect. Additionally, the boats were outfitted with compact radar jamming systems that disrupted the carrier's ability to track them accurately. The Venezuelan government, under the leadership of General Eduardo Medina, had been planning this attack for months, carefully hiding their preparations from intelligence agencies. The boats, which were distributed across several smaller coastal bases, were tasked with a single mission: to deliver a precision strike on the USS Gerald R Ford, using speed, stealth, and sheer numbers to break through its defenses. What made this attack even more dangerous was the coordination behind it. The Venezuelan Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, under Medina's direct command, had trained for months in small boat tactics and guerrilla warfare at sea. The objective was clear: make the attack so swift and overwhelming that even the most sophisticated defense systems would struggle to keep up. The Venezuelans had synchronized the launch of the boats, each one knowing its exact position and timing in the larger strategy. Once the boats set off from their hidden launch points in the pre-dawn hours, they formed an unpredictable pattern of maneuvers, designed to confuse the radar and force the USS Gerald R. Ford into a situation where it couldn't defend itself effectively. By striking in such a coordinated yet chaotic manner, they hoped to create a cascade of defensive failures, pushing the carrier into a defensive posture it was not accustomed to. When the USS Gerald R. Ford's crew finally realized the scale of the threat, it was almost too late. The advanced radar and sensors aboard the ship began to register the boats, but their numbers were overwhelming. The boats had been deployed in waves, and the Gerald R. Ford's radar system, which was built to track high-speed aircraft and larger threats, began to struggle under the strain. The crew scrambled to prepare the ship's defenses, but they faced a challenge. The boat's small profiles made them difficult to track, and their speed made interception incredibly difficult. While the ship's defense systems had been designed to counter large threats like missiles and aircraft, they were not optimized for a fast-moving swarm of boats attacking from multiple angles. As the boats approached, the USS Gerald R. Ford's crew rushed to deploy countermeasures. The ship's powerful radar systems activated, attempting to locate and target the incoming threats, while the air defense systems powered up, preparing to launch a barrage of anti-missile defenses. But it was clear that the speed of the attack had caught them off guard. The Venezuelan boats, equipped with advanced, self-guided missiles, were able to launch their payloads from a distance, targeting weak points in the Gerald R. Ford's armor. These missiles, while not capable of sinking the massive ship outright, were designed to do enough damage to disable critical systems and inflict damage that would put the carrier out of commission for an extended period. The USS Gerald R. Ford began to respond immediately, launching drones from its decks to intercept the incoming boats and employing its electromagnetic defense systems to attempt to neutralize the missile threats. However, the Venezuelans had prepared for this counterattack. They had anticipated the carrier's reaction and had deployed decoy boats, small, lightweight vessels designed to confuse the carrier's targeting systems. With every incoming missile, there were more decoys, and the ship's sensors became overloaded. The entire situation became a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, where every second counted. As the battle raged on, the strike group surrounding the USS Gerald R. Ford moved in to offer assistance. The USS Ross, a destroyer in the group, launched its own counterattack, firing missiles to destroy several of the Venezuelan boats. Still, the Venezuelan forces showed resilience, adjusting their tactics and continuing their assault in waves. The carrier's crew was pushed to their limits, coordinating between ship and air defense systems, trying to maintain a defense perimeter while dealing with the ever-present swarm of fast-moving boats. In this high-intensity moment, it became evident that traditional naval defense strategies, which had relied on large-scale ship-to-ship combat, were being tested like never before. The initial response to the attack exposed vulnerabilities in the U.S. Navy's approach to defending against unconventional threats. While the Gerald R. Ford and its supporting ships were able to repel the majority of the attack, it became clear that the tactics used by Venezuela were highly effective in disrupting conventional defense mechanisms. The fact that a small, nimble force could strike so effectively against one of the world's most advanced military assets raised critical questions about how navies around the world would need to adapt to new forms of asymmetric warfare. This was no longer a battle of brute force. It was a fight of innovation, where speed, stealth, and coordination had the potential to change the rules of engagement forever. The battle was raging, and the USS Gerald R. Ford was in the midst of an unprecedented defense. The ship's advanced systems were struggling to keep up with the sheer speed and unpredictability of the Venezuelan attack, and the crew was now relying heavily on the ship's countermeasures to prevent further damage. As the small attack boats continued to launch missiles and use deceptive tactics to overwhelm the defenses, the real test of the carrier's technological superiority began. The Venezuelan forces had a strategy to exploit weaknesses that had not yet been addressed by naval warfare experts. The Gerald R. Ford, with its cutting-edge defense systems, was designed to protect itself from large-scale missile threats, aerial assaults, and submarines. Yet the swarm tactics of the Venezuelans, smaller, faster boats attacking in waves, brought the ship's capabilities to their limits. The ship's integrated air and missile defense, IAMD system, which normally tracked and intercepted missiles fired from long distances, found itself working overtime to cope with the fast-moving projectiles that were coming from so many different directions at once. In response, the USS Gerald R. Ford's defensive measures began to fire at a blistering pace. Phalanx CIWS, close-in weapon systems, spun into action, launching rounds at incoming boats and missiles, while the ship's electronic warfare, EW, systems scrambled to create a counter to the jamming and decoy signals the Venezuelan forces had deployed. But despite these defenses, the Venezuelan forces seemed to have the upper hand. As the attack boats closed in, the USS Gerald R. Ford launched its own defensive measures, small intercept drones, designed to neutralize incoming threats before they could reach the ship. These drones darted through the sky, trying to engage the fast-moving boats. However, the Venezuelans were well prepared. Their boats had been fitted with a form of electromagnetic shielding that made it more difficult for the drones to lock on. This was an unexpected move by the Venezuelans, one that exploited a vulnerability in the Gerald R. Ford's drone interception system. The sheer number of boats involved only added to the confusion, overwhelming the carrier's defense systems. Meanwhile, the strike group surrounding the Gerald R. Ford wasn't standing idly by. The USS Ross, along with its accompanying destroyers, had moved into position to provide additional firepower and to defend the carrier from the boat's relentless waves. The USS Ross was armed with powerful surface-to-air missiles, designed to take down large aircraft and missiles. The crew quickly realized that they would need to modify their approach to deal with the sheer volume of small, fast-moving targets. The USS Ross launched a volley of anti-ship missiles designed to intercept the attack boats. But this wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. The Venezuelans had equipped many of their boats with radar-absorbing coatings, which significantly reduced their radar signatures. This made it difficult for the Ross's radar-guided missiles to lock onto their targets. As the attack intensified, the USS Gerald R. Ford's commanding officer, Admiral John Miller, had to make critical decisions. The carrier was beginning to take damage. Shrapnel from intercepted missiles had pierced the hull in a few places, and several of the communication systems had been disrupted. He ordered a full-scale deployment of anti-missile systems, and the ship's electronic warfare team began flooding the surrounding waters with signals meant to confuse the attackers. The problem was that the Venezuelan boats were operating in a much more decentralized, unpredictable fashion than anticipated. Their fast, irregular movements made it incredibly difficult for the Gerald R. Ford's defense systems to effectively neutralize all of the threats. While the ship's automated systems were designed to work in tandem, the Venezuelans had designed their attacks to counter that very coordination. In the midst of this chaos, the role of the USS Gerald R. Ford's crew became even more crucial. While the ship's automated systems continued to fire and neutralize incoming threats, human intervention was necessary to make quick, high-stakes decisions. The crew had to manually adjust the ship's defenses, prioritizing targets and redirecting fire to incoming missiles or boats based on their potential to cause the most damage. It was a high-pressure situation that tested not only the ship's technology, but the experience and training of the sailors on board. As the battle stretched on, the Gerald R. Ford's air wing began launching sorties in an attempt to regain control of the situation. The fighter jets, designed to provide air superiority, took to the skies, targeting some of the Venezuelan boats that were attempting to break through the outer perimeter. However, the small size and speed of the boats made them difficult targets for aircraft. The planes, although highly capable, were designed for larger threats. The smaller boats, darting in and out of the water, were almost like moving targets in a shooting gallery, but they couldn't be ignored. The damage caused by the Venezuelan boats wasn't catastrophic, but it was significant. The Gerald R. Ford sustained several hull breaches, and some of its communication systems had been rendered inoperable. The carrier had been forced to rely on less advanced communication methods to stay in contact with the rest of the fleet. The coordinated defense of the carrier had been put to the test, and while it hadn't been a complete failure, it was clear that the ship was vulnerable in ways that had not been fully anticipated. The Venezuelan attack had exposed weaknesses in the U.S. Navy's approach to protecting against unconventional threats. The U.S. Navy, though successful in repelling the attack, realized that the outcome of this engagement would have far-reaching consequences. The use of smaller, faster boats in such a coordinated fashion had caught them off guard. The Gerald R. Ford, for all its technological superiority, had shown that no matter how advanced a ship is, it can still be vulnerable to a well-coordinated asymmetrical attack. The incident forced the U.S. Navy to reconsider its strategies, recognizing the importance of addressing the evolving nature of naval warfare. The threat of swarm attacks using fast, low-cost boats could not be ignored any longer, and a new approach to defensive tactics was needed. In the aftermath of the attack, Admiral Miller and his staff began the process of assessing the damage and identifying lessons learned. The U.S. Navy's response to this attack would serve as a crucial turning point, shaping future defense strategies. While the Gerald R. Ford had come under attack and suffered some damage, it had also proven that even in the face of such an assault, the power of modern naval technology, when properly coordinated, could still prevail. However, the Venezuelan tactics had shown that the future of naval warfare would likely not be defined by massive battleships or missile strikes, but by the innovative use of small, agile forces capable of striking quickly and unpredictably. The world had just witnessed the future of warfare unfolding before their eyes. In the wake of the attack, the implications of the confrontation between the USS Gerald R. Ford and the Venezuelan Revolutionary Guard Corps were far-reaching, not just for military strategy, but also for global politics. The event had brought into sharp focus the vulnerabilities of even the most advanced naval assets in the face of new, unconventional warfare tactics. As the dust settled, the U.S. and the world's other major naval powers were left to reconsider their approach to naval defense, especially in terms of countering swarm tactics using small, fast-moving boats. The immediate consequences of the attack on the USS Gerald R. Ford were profound. Although the U.S. Navy was able to prevent a catastrophic failure, the incident raised serious concerns about the future of large naval vessels in combat. The once unthinkable idea that small, agile attack boats could outmaneuver and exploit weaknesses in the defense systems of a supercarrier became a topic of heated debate. In the days following the attack, numerous security experts and military strategists began to argue that naval forces worldwide would need to adapt to these new, unconventional threats. Swarm tactics, after all, were not just about the number of boats or their weapons, but their ability to disrupt advanced technology and overwhelm traditional defense systems. Internationally, the attack had significant diplomatic repercussions. While Venezuela's government justified the assault as a demonstration of national sovereignty, the United States viewed it as a clear violation of international norms and a provocative act of aggression. The incident strained relations between the two nations, with the U.S. demanding explanations and imposing economic sanctions on Venezuelan military officials. More importantly, it sent a message to other nations with similar asymmetric warfare strategies that even the most advanced military assets could be vulnerable to surprise, low-cost tactics. In response to the attack, the U.S. Navy launched an immediate review of its naval strategies. The Pentagon quickly realized that large, expensive ships like the USS Gerald R would need to be part of a more comprehensive strategy that incorporated smaller, more agile vessels capable of defending against unconventional threats. The Navy